learning about five elements helps you to see where you may have gaps, where you may not be attending, and where you can put a little bit of focus so that you can really feel better, because that's kind of what we're all going for. We want to feel better. We want to be happier. We want to be more whatever, fill in the blank for yourself. And so that's what the five element theory can do. And specifically what we in our company try to offer through this five element lens. Welcome to the world of energy, where science meets spirit. Ancient wisdom merges with cutting-edge knowledge, and the possibilities for a healthier, happier you are endless. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Energy Works. I am here today with Blaine. Hi, Blaine.
Hi, Lauren, and hi, everybody.
So I'm excited for this episode because we're going to get back into a little bit more five element theory, continuing on some of the themes that we brought up from the last joint podcast that Blaine and I did together. And there's a few things I just want to start off by saying. No, I'm just going to go joking. I got to start off by saying Enneagram. That was the one that we forgot last time when we're talking about all these different systems for understanding yourself. And that was the one we couldn't come up with. But, astrology, the Enneagram, the I Ching, I want to call it the Higgs boson. What's it called, Blaine?
Myers-Briggs.
Myers-Briggs, right. So there's all these different personality systems and ways also for like divination. People pull runes or tarot cards or go see a psychic medium because we want to know things about ourselves that we feel like we don't have access to, even though the truth is we have way more access than any of those external things, but they do help us and guide us. And I mean, I read the astrology all the time and just kind of see, I've actually spent a lot of time studying astrology and some of these different systems. What I love about five element theory is, yes, you could say it is a personality system, but it's also so much more than that. It encompasses everything in the universe and helps us to not compartmentalize them, but to understand the whole by looking at a part. You could think of it as fractal in nature, that you can go down to the smallest thing and up to the largest thing and see how they speak to each other. That theory, as above, so below. And so working with five elements theory helps you to understand not only your personality, but your physicality, your emotionality, your spirituality, and all of the people around you, as well as all of the planetary functions that are going on all the time. One of the other things I really love is that it is ancient and it is still proving out again and again and again. It is 5,000 years old. And yet if you go to your acupuncturist today, you are going to have an incredible result, whether you're dealing with pain or soreness or emotional issues or all of the things, stress, all of the things that acupuncture is good for. And yet that is all based on 5,000 years of theory that has proven out to become, I don't know if we can ever really call it fact, but to become really grounded in the science that we practice, right? We practice science, but it's really, a lot of it is based on these ancient techniques and learnings. Anything I missed there, Blaine, before we dive into kind of continuation of our talk?
No, I'll just, I'll say you touched on it, I think, that it's from nature, that the five element theory was based 5,000 years ago on whatever you want to call them, the saints, the sages, the intellectuals. It's fun to imagine the world 5,000 years ago without planes and trains and automobiles and, all of the noise and static and everything, tall buildings and houses with air conditioning and kitchens and microwaves and, everything that we live in today, when it's similar in India. The two oldest systems of medicine are from India and from China. And people were just outside. The philosophers, there's many different titles we can give people who really dedicated themselves to understanding how nature works and knowing that we are nature, even though as humans with these incredible intellects, we try to put ourselves in a different box than the bird or the dog or the cat or the snake or the squirrel or the bunny or whatever. But we are an animal, just like all the other animals. We just have, different gifts than other animals who also have some gifts that are much higher than our gifts. If we want to talk about like hearing and vision and vibration and being able to see the magnetic field and the incredible things that we're learning about animals all the time. We are an animal just like them. And so the way that nature works is the way that we work. And that is from where the whole 5-element theory comes from.
I love that you brought that through and forward, because it is such an important part of how and why this, I hate to keep calling it a theory. We'll have to come up, it's 5-element. Is there some other word besides theory? But how this 5-element system works is because it is based on literally the rising of the sun and the setting of the sun, and how everything works environmentally, universally, in our whole, everything is in 5-element theory. So it's really powerful. And I love that you brought up too, like there are so many creatures that have more abilities than we do. Like you said, birds that fly following the magnetic fields, and, salmon that go back to where they were born. It's just insane, the kind of capacities and capabilities that these creatures have. I often feel as an animal really deficit, especially I'm in wintertime now in northern Montana. It is cold, it is wintry, it is windy and stormy and all of that. And if I step outside, I need to have a lot of protection on me to be able to simply step outside, let alone spending any significant time there. And I drive by all the time, deer just, digging through the snow to get to the grass, and they burrow down in the snow, but they're not like, oh, it's so cold out, But when you talked about how this, how 5-element system emerged from these sages, these rishis, these people that were in deep meditation and study, that's the part that I just find the most fascinating. We do live in a world full of distractions, scrolling on the phones, all the machines, and even without all of that, we've got TV shows and movies, and even without all that, we've got all the books that we read in the magazines and all the people in our lives. I have friends and family all over the world that I stay connected with all the time. And that is much different than it was 5,000 years ago. They had the ability to go deeply inward and to focus in a way that I find it hard to even imagine today. This is why we spend time practicing in meditation. And that is just such a light touch in compared to the kind of deep meditation that these ancients were partaking in. And through these meditations, everything emerged. They could see the lines of energy flowing through the body and the points where that energy was more accessible from the surface of the skin. It's mind-boggling, the 365 meridian points in the body on the system that we work with. Now, we teach, and you can go in and feel a point, and when you put your hands on a part of the body and you feel a meridian point pulsing, you can see the excitement go through the room, like, wow, I'm touching into an actual meridian on my body. It's amazing. but we already know where the point is that we're looking for. Can you imagine having no map, literally creating the map? That's the part that just blows my circuits.
Yes. And I love what you said about all of our distractions now, because it's so true. I have a friend who went to Nepal. She's a massage therapist. And she went to Nepal to teach women there how to become massage therapists. And it was an effort to empower women, and they could, have their own business and make their own money. And so that was something that she did. And she has taught a lot of people to become massage therapists as a teacher of massage therapy to other therapists. And she said she had never seen anyone learn so fast, that these women they just memorized everything so quickly. And there was a big language barrier and translation and all of these things happening. And she said it was mind blowing how quickly they could learn and pick up and do. And it was just, she'd never seen anything like it before. She'd only taught in the United States before. And so finally she just asked them, like, how is it that you can learn so fast? I've never seen this before. And they said, your minds are too busy.
Wow. Not even a pause.
I know. Isn't that incredible?
There. Yeah, that's amazing. Mm-hmm. Your minds are too busy. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Yeah. Okay. We're going to have to do another podcast on quieting the mind. Meditation, even, with all of those techniques, the mind is busy, and it's a challenge. It's a challenge to kind of still the mind, but we're going to take that. We'll take that up in another conversation. But today we really want to talk about a little bit more about the 5 elements and why you should care. Why is it relevant to you? So the last 5 element conversation Blaine and I had, we talked about how valuable it is to have different elements in your company or in your business model or in really any kind of group that you bring together. It could be a board, it could be a book club or a sewing group or a ski group or a hiking group. And not that you're going to select people based on their element unless you are building a company, in which case I would, and we talked about this last time, absolutely put that on your requirement form. Find out what their element is so that you can have a well-rounded group of people running your company, because each of the elements brings a very specific skill set, a powerful emotional skill set, and as well, I don't want to say deficits, but sort of gaps in what their abilities are. And one of the reasons that this is so important to know, why 5 element systems is so valuable, is because you stop taking things personally. You stop taking things personally. You start to see the world around you as it is, not as you wish it were, and not as a direct response to you at all. It's like you never go out in the woods and think you know what? I don't like that tree right there. That tree should be over there. It will be much more balanced that way. You just don't do that. You look at nature and you accept it as it is. In the best of circumstances. I guess there is a lot of people that go out and think, it would be great if we had a highway through that wilderness area. But we're not going to go into that direction. These are people that are disconnected from nature, and that's a whole other podcast as well. So part of the value of learning 5 element methods is to be able to understand how people are, how they are. Even the people that want to drive the road through the wilderness area, that is based on their elements and how they see the world. That is what it is. It's how you see the world, how you respond to the world. And so we talked last time about how these diverse elements work together in running a company. Blaine being a dominant metal element with a secondary wood in very thumbnail sketching, meaning that she has the ability to see things from a higher vantage point. She's very organized and diligent. The wood part is get things done. She gets things done. She organizes them and then executes them and makes them happen. And that's a really powerful thing to have in a company, coupled with that ability to vision. That the metal is the visionary. And then coupled with myself, who's a primary wood, secondary water. Water also has some visionary capacities, the ability to kind of imagine how things could be, and very philosophical. If you've ever dived underneath the water and then looked up, you see everything kind of doesn't look super clear. So that visioning from that point is like everything is possible, but you're not seeing any of the limitations or what it would take to make something happen, which is where Blaine and I always interact. I'm like, let's do this. It's a great idea. And Blaine's like, okay, what it's going to take is A, B, C, D, E, F, X, Y, Z. And by the time she gets to Z, I'm like, you're right. That's not a good idea. Even though it seemed like a great idea when I was looking up from the water, when she's looking up from above at all of the moving pictures, she can see how it doesn't fit in and how it's really going to take energy away from some of the other things that we need to be doing. I also lead with that real get-her-done mentality. I'm determined. I make things happen again and again and again. My capacity is massive and ever expanding. And so how does that help you? For those of you that are part of our company, whether you listen to our podcast or you're a student in our school or you're a teacher who we've trained, who's now going and leading your own energy medicine classes and workshops around the world, you're part of our community. And Blaine and I, as leadership, bring our elements. That's how we lead. We lead through our elements. And so how is that valuable to you? So I want to pause for a minute and let Blaine chime in, because part of us both having really strong wood elements, and you've seen it because both of us do solo podcasts and we do podcasts together. And what can happen if we don't also have that capacity to be boundaried, which is a very water element thing, we can just take off. Like on some level, I don't even need Blaine because I just do my thing. And on some level, Blaine doesn't even need me because she can just do her thing. But when we come together, our capacity magnifies exponentially, and the joy in what we create also magnifies as well. So we also are very boundaried, and that neither of us just run off and do our own thing without consulting and integrating with the other. That's the value of this company and being together in this company. Otherwise, we would just do our own things all the time. So, Blaine, jump on in.
Yes, I mean, there was a time that I had my own company and you had your own company. And we've definitely both learned that we're better together than we were apart. I think we serve more people in a more effective way, you know, et cetera, working together than working separately. I want to go back to what you said about why do we care about the 5 elements? And that part of it is that you learn to not take things personally. That's probably been, from a dealing with people perspective, one of the most powerful things for me, because we have egos and we all look at the world a certain way. We recently led a retreat in Costa Rica, and I said a few times on the retreat when I was teaching, isn't it amazing that we can all get along? Because every single one of us looks at the world completely differently. We're all, my point of view about the world, and, you know, my partners and Lauren's and her partners and my brother. And I mean, everybody in the world, we all have this radically different life experience. And we came into the world with our own unique constitution that we carried forward into our life experience. And that's our vision, our filters that we lay on everything. No two people are the same or see things the same. So I do think it's a miracle that we all get along, but understanding that each of us, on top of all that, one of our filters is our element, our primary element, our secondary element. But we're all 5 elements. And so our unique mix, which is always shifting and changing with any given moment of the five elements, is a big driver of what we say, how we feel, how we move through the world. And so when I feel the tendency to judge, I'm secondary wood. And so I do have, stronger than some other people, this ability to look at someone else and say, well, why would they do that? I would do it like this. They should do things the way I do them, right? And really try to, judge everything against me and the way that I look through the world. I now can very comfortably say, oh, like they're doing that because of their element. They're maybe a primary fire, which can be quite like reactive and quick, where I need to like step back and think about it and have the vision and look all around me. Like I don't make rash, quick decisions. And that's a pro and a con. Like sometimes you need to make, like there's no time to like think about it and journal and sleep on it a couple of nights and explore, like the decision needs to be made. Time is money, or whatever you want to look at it. Like just make a decision, where other people like, wow, like if they would have stepped back and considered that a little more, I think they would have made a better decision. Like they should do that all the time. But the reason why they didn't is because they're primary fire, and that's not what they do. And so who am I to judge? Who am I to judge? And so knowing that a water person, a wood person, a fire, an earth, a metal, and all of the various permutations of the five elements drives the way people think, see, move, do, then I can accept that. And instead of trying to judge them, change them, or, work around them, I can meld myself with them because I have a sense of why they did what they did.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I think I mentioned this story before, but it's still in my brain. It's so powerful. Jane Goodall talked about when she first started working with chimpanzees, and there was some, I think it was ExxonMobil, but I might be wrong on that, was also exploring the same areas for very different reasons. And she had a chance to speak with them. And gosh, now I might be mixing up stories. It might have been actually about companies that were using chimpanzees in kind of awful ways, studies and so forth. And she had a chance to speak with them. And instead of going in there all righteous and what they were doing was wrong and bad and all of that, she went in there and she met them on common ground. I know you all love your families and love your children and love the worlds that you have. Like she met them where they could all meet on common ground, which is that underneath whatever ego, drive, ambition, even work that we do in the world, we really are human animals, and we do have the same hearts at the root of it all, or at the core of it all. And so she was able to go beyond the five elements, beyond how we present to the world, and come to the place where how do we start to understand each other and find common ground. And knowing the five elements, I think, is a real powerful way to do that, because you have access to understanding, just like what you just said, Blaine, like somebody's making rash decisions and you know that they're a fire element. You have a way to communicate with them that isn't judgmental, that isn't accusatory, that isn't any of those things, that comes from a place of understanding. And especially how we operate in our company, we have a lot of clients, a lot of students that come to us seeking help, support, direction, guidance. And it's really not very easy to do that if you're not able to find some common ground. If you just come at them from your element and then you go bump up against their element, then you're going to just have this kind of clashing. Whereas if you can understand your own element and then you can understand their elements, then you can come together in a much more compassionate and understanding way. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about how how the value that we find in having these mixed elements in our company, how that helps us serve you. And I'll start again with Blaine, because this is a way that Blaine serves me as well, and how she has helped me in my life. And I'll speak to the metal part because the wood part is something that I understand very well. So I don't need a lot of lessons in wood. I know what I need to study and learn about the wood element. But metal is something I don't have as much facility with. And so the things that I see in Blaine, I know I keep talking about it. It's amazing to me how organized she is. Like there's another woman in our company, Mary, who spends some time in my hometown. And so she comes over to the house and she helps me with different things on social media or whatever. She's also a primary metal element. And she was at the Costa Rica retreat and she talked about how she organizes her closets, because we were explaining to everyone what the elements mean. And so there's very concrete examples is how do you do certain things? So how does she organize her closet? And the room was uproarious with laughter. She's like, all the sweaters are here and next to the shirts that are a little lighter layer, and then next to the t-shirts, and then the color scheme. She had these color schemes, just like the whole thing. I mean, people were like jaw dropped. And then she comes over to my house. I'm looking around my office. If you saw my office, you would be like, how is this woman running a multi-million-dollar company? And I'll tell you how. She's sitting right next to me, because Blaine is so organized, not only with her space, but with her brain is organized. Her time is organized. How she allots her day is very organized. I mean, she's a high-level competitive athlete. She runs a multi-million-dollar company. She's a coach, individual coach to many people. I mean, she's in a long-term marriage relationship. Like, she's got a lot of things going on. She maintains 2 houses. She has a lot going on. She can do all that because she's very organized. So I look to her and I think, okay, how can I take some of that organizational skills into my own life? Now, here's where it gets really interesting, because a lot of people, and this came up on the retreat a lot, everyone was like, I could never be like Blaine. And what they're saying is, I could never be like Blaine, so I'm not even going to do any of it. I could never be that organized and that disciplined and, all of that. So that's one way to look at it. You could just say, nope, can't do that, walk away. But what I say is, I'm going to look at Blaine as an inspiration. I actually have a hashtag Blainespiration, because I'm so inspired by what she accomplishes and what she does. Her capacity is massive as well. And so what can I learn from Blaine that I can then translate through my own element system? I'm never going to be exactly like Blaine, but I can see what she does and be inspired or Blaine-spired by her and take some of those things into my own life, which I have done and continue to do. And so as a leader in our company, she helps people see where they can optimize their time, where they can organize a little bit more, where they can be a little bit, have a higher viewpoint in what they're doing and not get so lost in the details. And it's not that she's never saying this, be like me. She is just sharing from her perspective the things that work and how you can start to take these little tools and apply them in your life. And so there's a way that we as a company share that information out in a way that you can take that in and start to have these small sparks that help you to transform the things in your life that need transforming, or to even see what those could be. A lot of times when people are stuck, they can't even see what it is that's making them be stuck. And that, when you have somebody with a metal element that can help you to rise up out of the muck and look down and see everything, just that alone can allow you to shift your perspective and then allow you to take some of these tools into your life to do the things that you want to do. The goal is not to be like Blaine. The goal is not to be like me. The goal is to be who you are in a way that you feel joyful, comfortable, peaceful in your own life, and that you know the things that you want to work on and you have the tools to work on them, that you have the ability to accept how things are in your life and move forward from there, all of those things. That is the goal. And so learning about 5 elements helps you to see where you may have gaps, where you may not be attending, and where you can put a little bit of focus so that you can really feel better, because that's kind of what we're all going for. We want to feel better. We want to be happier. We want to be more whatever, fill in the blank for yourself. And so that's what the 5 element theory can do. And specifically what we in our company try to offer through this 5 element lens.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I have so many ways that I look to others who are not metal and wood for different ways. Lauren specifically, it's creativity, and even more specifically, writing. Lauren is an incredible writer, and I don't even think I'm exaggerating, can be like, oh, I have 5 minutes. Here we go. Like, let me write like a couple of page newsletter that is like so heartwarming and like emotional and real and just so like, it just pours out of her. She's so talented at it. My writing style, I have a distinct style that I've been working on. It's shorter sentences. It's a little more, it's more how I talk. It's more how I think. But I would never used to be like, oh, I have 10 minutes. Let me just write something. I'm like, no, I got to think about it. I got to write an outline. I need to like run and process and now I'm like, no, I have 10 minutes. I can write something and just let it come out of me. And that is something from the water that like I flow, just Blaine, just like let it flow. And then, you can work with what you have. It doesn't have to be all perfect before you write one word. That is something I've learned from Lauren, because my water, I'm always trying to strengthen it. And my fire is very similar. I have weak fire, and fire is fun and joy and spontaneity. And I have a lot of close friends who are fire. And I think that we become close friends because they seek structure, and, they're not intentionally, but, they're drawn to people who provide more structure because they know they need it. And I can be drawn to people who have more fun and spontaneity. And I really lean on my fire friends to be role models for me, because, there's me and time are a whole thing, but there's so many times that I'm like, I need to do something, but, oh, I only have like this many minutes and I can't do it that fast. And, so I push on, where I have friends who, they do so many, they're like, oh, I have 5 minutes. I can do this and this and this, and part of it, like Lauren with the writing, I have this little bit of time, just do it. But, I have friends, it's amazing. Of course, they're like running out the door late with their hair on fire all the time, which is not something that I would ever do, because, they're doing 19 things. And they think they can do 19 things in 5 minutes before they walk out the door, which of course they cannot. So then they're running late. But just the spirit of like saying yes, like, yes, I can do it, and being spontaneous and having the fun. Because for me, my lens is more, no, that's not what I planned. I wasn't going to do that today. And I shut things down. And so I really lean on fire, and surrounding myself with the fire makes me say yes. And I put myself in situations where I can feel joy instead of saying no to them. Similar with earth, the nurturing, the people who are so nurturing with their friends and their family. And I don't always think of my friends and family first. I can be pretty up in my own head. I can live in my head and be quite absorbed. But there's other people who I know who are earth, who I watch, and I learn about how much they give of themselves just genuinely without a second thought. Or someone is sick, I need to make them some food now, and I need to take it to their house. And that's just like their first instinct. And surrounding myself with people like that awakens that in me. Because when I do have that thought and I follow through on it, it's so heart-filling to support someone. What is more heart-filling than that? It's just not always my first instinct. But the more that I observe the people that it is, the more it starts to become instinctual for me.
So beautiful. I love you said, and then when I take ourselves out there, as kind of a spoken typo, but really it is ourselves, right? Because it's your water self, your wood self, your fire self, your earth self, your metal self. And that's how we are made up. And one of the things that's so powerful, what you're talking about, Blaine, of leaning into these other friends and how they inspire you, is we are all the elements. And you said that before, but I want to just like really put a pin in that and really accent that. We have all of these elements in different amounts and at different times in our lives. We can be in a time of one of these elements, and then we're very much leaning into it. And we've talked about that before, a caretaking element when someone's dying and you are in the earth element, no matter what else is going on. But really, we have all of these elements going all the time through us. And one of the values of knowing and having the ability to pull from all of them, the gifts, I call it, of each of the elements, is that without that, there is a gap. There is a gap. I don't know if any of you remember the game Trivial Pursuits. I don't even know when it came out, but it was literally a trivia game. And it had these little pie-shaped circles with gaps in them. And I think in that it was 6. And you would put, when you got the answer for one of the categories, you would put the little pie-shaped plastic thing into the little receptacle, and you would try to fill up your pie so that you had all 6 complete and the first person that did 1. And it had the different categories. So 5-element theory is very similar to that. In fact, Blaine and I are teaching a course this year at Omega Institute, which is based on my 3rd book, The Energy to Heal, which is all about healing trauma and stress in our lives. And one of the reasons that we can't get beyond an event, an ongoing stress or a traumatic event, or one of those just mind loops that keep, like, I had that argument with that person, you go over it again and again, and why can't I let it go? And you wake up and you're still thinking about it, and you go to sleep and you're still thinking about it, and 10 months later, you're still thinking about it, and you can't let it go, is because you haven't satisfied each of the elements within that specific thing that you are struggling with. We need to be able to understand elementally how we show up and respond to anything that happens in our lives so that we can be complete with it and ultimately let it go, which doesn't mean like let go and it drops down in a way and you never see it again. It's let it go so that it metabolizes through your system and becomes a part of you, but a part of you that is no longer requiring your attention. It's not a part of you. It's not an itch that needs to be scratched. It's just metabolized. Like whatever you ate for dinner a month ago is now part of your physical structure. Your body isn't thinking like, okay, what do I do with that piece of lettuce? And where does that cheese go? Where does that lentil bean go? It's done. It's done that. It's now part of your body, for better or for worse. And it's part of you now. And when we go through something, we have to satisfy each of the elements for it to metabolize fully and become part of us that isn't always requiring our attention. And by that, it's that voice saying, what about this? And da-da-da-da-da, that inability to let it go. If it's up in your mind and you're constantly thinking about it, you haven't satisfied each of the elemental pieces of whatever that thing is. So that's why it's really valuable and important to learn about the elements that aren't yours. If you're a wood element primary and you are not in balance, chances are you're like, everything's fine. I just, the way I am, and that's how it is, and this is how the way the world should be, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And that's just how you go through the world. But the world doesn't respond in that way. It doesn't just answer everything you want to happen and make happen, everything that you think should happen. That is not how the world works. And so you will find yourself in conflict a lot, which a lot of wood imbalanced people do, find themselves a lot of the time in conflict. And so in order to shift those perspectives, you need to understand all of the elements. And that is really why this is so important for you. This idea of like, why should I care? If everything is perfect and fine and great and wonderful in your life, then you don't need to worry about any of this. But if that's not the case, this is the first crack into understanding why.
Yeah, and if you want to learn more about the elements, I know we talk about the elements a lot, and I know in previous podcasts we have mentioned different resources. Lauren's second and third book dive into 5-element theory, the energy medicine yoga prescription, and the energy to heal that she just mentioned. I'll say, if you're like, well, which do I want? The second one is, I would say, more yoga based, and you learn specific yoga practices that help you learn the different elements or help you work with the different elements. Where the energy to heal is more, like she said, like stress and trauma healing book. It's called The Energy to Heal. And so if something around like stress and trauma calls to you more, it would be the energy to heal. If something around yoga calls to you more, it would be the energy medicine yoga prescription. But both of them are great resources to start to dive into 5-element theory. And then we have a course, we can put a link to it in the show notes, that also dives into 5-element theory. So you can also use the Google and just read. I mean, there's plenty available on the internet. We have a newsletter. If you go to our website, emyoga.net, you can scroll to the bottom and sign up for our newsletter. Not every single one of our newsletters is about 5-element theory, but because it's such a backbone to what we teach and how we think, we talk about 5-element theory quite a lot as well in the newsletters. So those are a few resources for you. Lauren, anything else you want to touch on?
Gosh, here's one of the problems with 5-element theory is it's so massive that there's so many different areas to touch on. But one that I was thinking about before we came online is we talk a lot about the emotions and the kind of personality that comes through with 5-element theory. But one of the things I love so much about it is how it connects the emotions to the physicality. And in yoga practice, there's not a lot of talk about emotions. There's just sort of a few things that people talk about. If you start crying, this could be why. But there's many more emotions than crying. And I love the connection between your emotional body and the physical body. And so whenever I have something physical come up, I always want to look and see, well, what element is that in? Because that's going to tell me and give me information about what's going on in my mind and brain, which, as we now know, is a direct factor to what's going on physically in the body. Even a driver. Even things like accidents, which people say, well, I just slipped and tripped down the stairs, like I did a couple of years ago. I could just say, I just slipped and tripped down the stairs. What does that have to do with my emotions? What does that have to do with what element I am? It was a total freak thing that happened in the middle of the night in the pitch dark, has nothing to do with anything. That's one tack that you could take. But you could also look at the injuries that I sustained and connect them very directly to elements. And I write about this in the Energy to Heal. When I'm talking about this, it's like two people could have the exact same accident, and one person will break a bone and one person will tear an ACL. The person that broke the bone would be likely a primary water element because bones are governed by water. The person that tore the ACL will probably be a primary wood element, since wood governs muscles and tendons and ligaments. And so what was likely out of balance precipitating that fall could be, if you were the water, worry, and here you are falling down the stairs and breaking a bone. Or you could be anger if you're wood element out of balance, and there you are thinking about something that you're so angry about, you're not even paying attention to what's going on around you, you stumble, trip, and fall. I'm not saying that every single thing is going to be that directly correlated. But if any of you at all read or study the great Louise Hay, you will know that pretty much every single thing is connected to an emotional piece. And so the 5-element theory gives you that direct correlation for you to then start to explore more. And so anytime I have anything going on, if I have a pimple, I'm like, let me look at the metal element. What's going on right now? Because something's going on in my skin. And so is there something that I need to understand and work on to release and let go so that I'm not getting this physical nudge from the body to look at something? Because that's often what is happening. And Western medicine has started to take serious note of that with their leaning in finally to stress. But even things like cancer now, Western medicine is starting to look at the emotional correlates to what brings on some of these really powerful challenges in the physical body. We are one thing. Mind, body, spirit, energy is one thing. There, even though we study, you can study the physiology and you can dissect a cadaver and like look at a vein and look at the heart, but it's not ever one thing separated out. It is one thing whole together. And 5-element theory helps you to discern these connections and what they are trying to tell us. It's really one of the most powerful systems, I think, that exists. I hope that you find some of that within some of the words that we've shared today and some of the resources that we'll drop in the show notes, and would love to hear your thoughts and questions and ideas about this really beautiful and massive topic and how it affects your life, because that's what this is all about, is how can this help you? Let us know.
Thanks, Lauren, and thanks, everybody. I'll reiterate what Lauren said. If you want to give us any comments, share your thoughts on this. We always love to see them. And we'll see you next time on Energy Works. Alrighty, Energy fans, that's a wrap on another positively charged episode of Energy Works. Lauren, this is the part where we get to use our energy puns.
It's been electrifying, hasn't it, Blaine? We hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have.
If you're feeling amped up and you want to keep your energy flowing, be sure to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform.
And we'd love to hear from you, so please take a moment to leave us a review. Your feedback helps us continue to deliver content that resonates, so light up our inbox.
And spark a conversation with your friends to tell them about us. And we'll see you next time on Energy Works.